warm welcome from my side again to the Pioneers Online Learning Lab. Today's session, I'm very excited about it, is with the title Post-Corona, Transforming Your Business for Resilience. And we have two very great guest speakers, Carsten and Michael from d.quarks. But before we start introducing them and our moderator, I'm just going to mention a few more things. And for those of you who are here for the first time in the Pioneers Online Learning Lab, what is the Learning Lab? It's already the 7th session that we have today. It's a series of online workshops and discussions that we have to foster exchange in the innovation ecosystem, especially during times where people are working from home and business events are cancelled. I'm super excited to see on a regular basis familiar faces that are joining and discussing with us. And yeah, great to have you all here. Just before we start, this session is in Zoom, as you know, so Zoom has some functionalities. It namely has the chat function. So if you have any questions, please make use of the chat functions to ask us anything. And our moderator, Felix, will kind of get into that and ask and direct the questions towards our experts today. You're also free to speak up if you have a question. So please use that then in the Q&A session. Please be brief and short if possible. And also be aware that we're recording this session. So whatever you post in the chat is completely anonymous and not recorded. However, if you do speak up in the discussion later, this will also be part of the recording. And we are uploading our recordings on a regular basis on our YouTube channel, just for people to also have the chance to join the session or to watch the session who couldn't join today. So there's also a reaction button in Zoom that you can use, the thumb up if you approve with what's being said, and clap. I don't know why there's not a thumb down or a controversial button yet, but that will be happening in the discussion. If you don't approve, of course, you can also ask critical questions always. What else? I think that's most what I wanted to say. The agenda of the Online Learning Lab for upcoming sessions will be posted in the chat by me in a minute as well. And if you have signed up for today, you will receive the slides afterwards in a follow-up email. If you haven't signed up, don't worry, we'll get you covered too. You can just send me an email and I will send you the slides as well. So that's it from me. I'm now very happy to hand over to my colleague, Felix Bellinger, and look forward to a fruitful session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Micha. Thanks for introducing, and hello from my side. My name is Felix. I am Director Innovation and Strategy at Pioneers, and I'm very happy to do the session today, be the moderator for today. And yeah, thanks for taking the time to join us here. I hope we have a very fruitful discussion today. And so let's start with our guests, Dr. Carsten Hentrich and Michael Pachmajer joining us today. And before we go into an introduction by themselves, I would like to ask everyone in this session to write a short introduction of themselves in the chat here before we go over to the agenda. So please take yourself time and write a short introduction right now. Okay, I see just a few reactions. Maybe the others also, please write a few words so that we know who's joining. Thanks a lot. All right, so I see everyone is very active right now. Okay, so we can start with the agenda. Thank you, everyone. Then let's go over to the agenda for today. So after the introduction of Pachmajer and Carsten Hentrich, we will start with a small impulse, setting up innovation competence. Then we will have an introduction of the innovation framework. And this will be already a very interactive part, follow up with a quick Q&A and a pulse session. And then we go over to an exercise where we also, every one of you asked to participate very actively, hopefully, and then close the session for today with a discussion so far. And yeah, so let's have a great time today. I'm handing over to Michael and Carsten. The stage is yours.
Right, thank you, Felix. Maybe I just share my screen now.
Mm-hmm.
So now you should be able to see my screen. I'm just starting our little deck. So we give a first little introduction into the topic. And the topic itself is about sort of the idea of resilience and how we can use this post-pandemic situation now to basically prepare ourselves for a more resilient company. So, but before we do that, maybe first we introduce ourselves briefly. So I'm Carsten. I'm the co-founder of d.quarks. And I've been dealing with transformation for most of my life, actually. So I'm a technologist at heart, and I call myself sometimes a creative artist in mind. So I have these two attitudes inside my personality, to be techie on the one hand side, but also to be a designer, I would say, or a creative person on the other. So, and that's something that is quite helpful when you work with companies for transformation, because those parts are both being required. Yeah, and I'm a co-founder of d.quarks, and we are working with different companies of different sizes in their transformation journey. We're sparring partners, we're developing competencies, and we're basically enabling those companies for their transformation. So we are working on tools and methods and frameworks and everything that a company needs to actually master a transformation itself. And one part of what we've done and what we've worked on, we will introduce today as a handy tool, a handy framework for transformation today. Yeah, I'm also a lecturer at the Goethe Business School together with Michael. So in an MBA program, I'm also an author and a speaker, apart from being a guy who's working with companies on their transformation. Michael, maybe a few words about yourself as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carsten, and welcome everybody. I haven't so much adding comments to Carsten, because our career in the last 9 years are striving very parallel. So we are sparring partners, we are authors, we are lecturers at Goethe Business School. From my background, I'm a geographer. I deal with interdisciplinary approaches my whole life, and I'm working in family businesses and big corporates, as well as in management and technology consulting firms. And if Carsten is looking transformational processes more from a structural perspective, technology and processes, I'm more the guy who is dealing with and managing transformation processes from a people perspective. So I'm focusing on people change, organizational change, and the culture we need to be more innovative, more agile, and companies become a resilient company. So happy to join the next 90 minutes with you, and hand over to Carsten.
Right, thank you, Michael. So let's dive into the topic. So I would like to share with you a few thoughts on why we think transformation and specifically innovation is so important for this idea of actually getting yourself out of this shock situation of the current pandemic that we're currently in, out of this crisis mode. And the picture that you see here is actually taken from resilient theory. And it says basically that in a moment of crisis, we're coming to that point where we are facing something what we call the moment of truth. The truth actually reveals itself in terms of what mistakes we have made, what weaknesses we have in our business, and everything really becomes clear because the crisis hits us. It's really reality hits us really hard typically. And we have to face this moment of truth. And typically this moment of truth is the start of a transformation. And we start typically drawing a new picture of the future. So we start saying, okay, now we're in a crisis. So if we envision we're getting out of this crisis mode, and in order to be more resilient in the future, how does a future picture of our company look like? And we typically then start to run business model innovation, to design new business models which are more resilient, to develop certain capabilities that make us more resilient. And basically then, as we have established it, we start to basically start it and scale it and optimize it. And it's actually a cycle where we are coming out of crisis, and typically once we have invented a new business model, we might run again into a new crisis, and we continuously need to reinvent ourselves. The point is that we spend a lot of effort on this scalability idea, on this optimization idea of businesses, but sort of we are not so focused yet on this continuous innovation, and how continuous innovation on looking at our business model, looking at the weaknesses in our value chain of how we operate our business model and how we run our business model. And this continuous innovation actually is a tool for preventing crisis, and that we should cultivate a more like a true culture of innovation, which gives us some more stability and more ability to be more resilient and to be more prepared for crisis, if we look at it as a continuous process of innovation, where we are trying to actively look at the risks, face the weaknesses, and try to work with them rather than waiting until the crisis has hit us. So the crisis should be used as a period of change. So we should at it from a constructive perspective, as it reveals all those weaknesses. And so we should look at it from a constructive and maybe a positive angle, and use it as a moment of truth, and basically start to reinvent ourselves, and use that as a momentum of transformation, and move forward to innovate our business. So why is it so important, and why is also technology so important in that context of transformation, and also why technology must be considered also as an important factor in preparing ourselves for crisis. So as we are living in a digital age, basically, and the development of technologies as it's been following like an exponential curve, which is shown in this red line here on this slide. Actually, the possibilities that technologies give us and the combinations of technologies give us are actually scaling in an exponential scale, right? But our human mind sort of seems to be conditioned more in a linear way. So, and in that sense, it's important to be aware of that, and rather say, okay, we need to adapt ourselves more to this linear curve, and in that sense, develop a more agile kind of attitude, which is able actually to operate in such a situation where we are dealing with more uncertainty, where we are also dealing with events that we have not planned, like this pandemic. So we need to prepare ourselves as leaders as well, but also as from an operations perspective of the whole company. We need to prepare ourselves to be more adaptable, and we need to prepare ourselves to be more effectively leveraging the possibilities that this exponential curve of technologies that are actually a basis for innovation can give us. So we need to get into that more nonlinear kind of thinking and create enterprises, create companies that have a more adaptable nature and a more organic nature to be better able to react to those unplanned events. So the question is, which is the business model that we are as successful in the digital age as we were in the past. And as we're living in this digital age, so technologies are increasingly relevant. And we see that a lot of digital players are actually booming in this current pandemic situation. They have invested in diverse business models, even in complementary business models that are basically working really in a complementary way. And in that sense, innovation, if it's based on digital, it seems to be more stable and resilient, and it gives us more opportunities to innovate and to go into different directions. And in that sense, also prepare ourselves for different crisis situations in a pretty comprehensive way. So the question is, what business model are we just as successful in the digital age as we were in the past? And in that sense, if we look at the resilience loop that I've shown, so the left side, which is this continuous business model innovation, is a quite a critical point that needs to be addressed more precisely. So, and if we look at innovation, then what often occurs that we get stuck in this typical innovator's dilemma, because we are basically innovating within the context of the current business model that we're in, right? So we are just looking for supportive technologies, and we're innovating on really supporting the market that we're in and supporting basically the whole value chain that we're currently operating in. And we all know that sort of disruptive technologies are actually have the power actually destroy the market that we're currently in. So the point is, we need to consciously, when we innovate, also look at those disruptive parts and saying, okay, we might consciously destroy a certain part of our value chain. We might even consciously destroy our markets and get out of that innovator's dilemma, because if we don't do it, somebody else would do it. And if we don't do it, we might not be prepared for a certain crisis situation, right? So one could argue, for instance, if a company, some airline company, could also decide to invest in a disruptive and complementary technology and business to their current business. Let's say if an airline has invested or built a company like Zoom, right? So while people are not flying anymore in such a crisis situation, sort of the virtual online technologies for communication are actually scaling up, right? I think I just heard saw a figure recently that Zoom is now more valuable than the 7 biggest airlines. So that is something that we probably need to consciously more look at. So this disruptive part, and get out of that innovator's dilemma, and not just looking at supportive technologies, because we need to consciously look at, okay, there might be aspects that might destroy our market, and there might be certain crisis situations that occur. It might be a new player that is coming in the market that might bring that disruptive technology into place and destroy ourselves, or we rather decide that we consciously do it ourselves and invest in that direction. So diversity becomes more important. So, and the way we do that is typically to get into an attitude of innovation and an attitude of how we look at things. And one friend of Michael and myself, one good guy that we both know quite well from a couple of travels that we did into the Valley, is a German guy. He's the Chief Innovation Officer of Google, Friedrich Fert. Maybe some of you have heard him. And he says innovation comes by changing a simple word. He says, if you look at things just by saying, yes, but, right? So if I have an idea and I argue, yes, but it doesn't work. Yes, but I'm not sure if this will go the right way, or I'm not sure if we can pay for this. I'm not sure if it works. So the but actually can destroy an idea in a very early state. But it's very natural that ideas in an early state have more questions than answers, right? So you can change the nature of your critique just by changing this small word. And if you change the but into an and you say, yes, and we need to look at the cost, and we need to look at the revenue, and we need to really actually validate the value proposition. So if you give it a more constructive spin to it, just by changing the but to an end, you have a whole different approach to ideas and to how you work with ideas. So you give it a more constructive spin. So the point is that innovation really starts in our heads and in the way we're looking at things, in our mindset. And it's these simple things that actually need to get us into that mood of really a constructive approach of changing and transformation. At this point, Michael, maybe I hand over to you for the next one.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carsten. Please do me a favor. Can you go back to the first slide, to our lazy 8, to our resilient loop? Thank you very much. Guys in the audience, I would like to start a first poll with you and think back what Carsten said about where a company could be on this infinity loop. So we had a first poll with you and a question, at which point in the resilience loop are you? Are you in your company, in your business at the moment? So please, the voting is now started. And please answer. We have, we are optimizing our current business model. We are in a crisis mode. We are already working on our future vision, or we are running new business model innovation on a regular basis. These are potential options of your answer.
Thank you, Michael. I think we can wait a few minutes here. See, some participants are already very active here in this.
This is quite interesting to see this result because it means that the first shock is over, at least in this group of participants today in our course. So no one is in a crisis mode at the moment. So most of you are already started working on the future. Learning from the crisis is very important, and to develop a future picture of your company which you would like to achieve in the next 5 to 6 years is something where you are working on. And running a new business model innovation on a regular basis, at least 19% of you. So this is what we are talking now, how to start innovation, how to set up a competency, an innovation competency. And Carsten, please skip to the slide. Yeah, thank you very much. So if we are talking about setting up or building an innovation competency, we have to consider that the structural change and the cultural change of building up competency. So people and skills in organization are reflecting the cultural change, and processes and technology are reflecting the structural change. And for us, it is very important. This is also one of our guiding principles of our d.quarks model, that we think both together. So we have developed a holistic framework of digital capabilities which are required to successfully realize digital business models or service models or digital products. And for these kind of implementing these ideas, you need different kind of capabilities. And one very important capability which we would like to focus today is innovation competency, innovation capability. So let me go through these 4 strategic dimensions and explain a little bit more in deep what you have to think about if you start setting up an innovation competency. Next one. Every time we are thinking about a transformational path of a new capability, we have to at first to think about the people. So which kind of competencies and skills we need? which kind of new roles we have to implement in our organization. And especially for innovation, you need a new team of people. At the best, we need a dedicated team. What we see at the moment in many, many companies, that people who are working 100% on their regular job has to be joining innovation projects to the next 20%. So these people are people who have a workload of 120, 130%. And this doesn't make sense if you would like to be an innovative company on a regular basis. So to do this, at first you need the mindset to set up a dedicated team. And for this dedicated innovation team, you need different kind of new capabilities, new skills. So we need people who are very familiar with new technologies, who are forward thinking and forward looking for new digital trends, people who have an experience in realizing new innovation, and of course also people who have a tech and a design background, because many ideas we develop around our products are services, and to realize services, it's very important to have the customer centric approach established in your processes, in your innovation processes. And for these, you need people who are very familiar with customer-centric design. And this is the reason why you have to think about to hire or to develop people with an UX or UI designer competencies. User experience, user interaction designer are very important in your team. And of course, developer. All the new ideas we develop are technology-enabled services or data-driven services. So you need people who are able to develop software, who are able to program algorithms, who are able to develop new code as a foundation, as an enabler for a new service or product. So be aware, you need a mixed team of different competencies, interdisciplinary background approach, and the idea is that these people are working together in one team, in one room at the same time. The next one is the question of how should these people, how should this team collaborate at its best? And what we believe is that we think that in companies of the future, in future companies, we will see a lot of different organizational patterns being or existing in parallel. So for innovation, depending on the scope of innovation, we see at least 3 different organizational patterns which you have to in your mind if you start working on setting up the right organization. I would like to highlight incubation, acceleration, and the lab. The lab is something where you can experiment different new technologies and tools, and to play around with these tools, for instance, with blockchain or with big data or with other tools. You need a team, you need someone and an organization who is doing only this in a laboratory way of work. An incubator is something where you bring an idea in a secure or safe environment, I would say, in an environment which is separated from the legacy organization and which helps this idea to develop for a certain period of time until this idea is strong and valid enough and stable enough to exist also in a legacy organization or in a market environment. And for these kind of idea development or business development, you need an organization which we call incubator. And this is at least something you have to be in your mind if you start thinking which is the best organization for this dedicated innovation team. And if you would like to deal with startups, for instance, or with other partners, it is important to have something where you can accelerate your business. Because if you think about to work together and to collaborate with companies or with partners outside your company, you need a program where you can involve and invite these companies and startups, for instance. And an accelerator program could be one good idea, good approach to collaborate with external partners. Then you need, in the third dimension, a process, an agile process. Next slide, Carsten. So to work in an incubator with a dedicated innovation team, it is very important to have an underlying innovation process. And to do this, you can reuse the design thinking process, which we know very well from different other projects, for instance. And I believe most of you have at least one time experience with such a process. So design thinking process is a user-centered design process, which was invented from IDEO in Palo Alto 30 years ago to develop products and services from a customer-centric or from a customer perspective. And we have to not reinvent a process. We can use this process, which is already existing and which is proven in many situations in the past. So please reuse this design thinking process and implement this process in your incubator or in your lab to have something where you can give orientation and guidance for the people who are working together in this incubator, for instance, and with the people in the legacy organization and with external partners. A dedicated process is important to run an innovation successfully. And if you are in a situation where you start creating an MVP, a code, a software for a certain kind of service, then you can move to another agile working process, for instance, to a Scrum process, which is very familiar to, well, for software entwicklers to develop software in an agile working mode. So key message here, the key takeaway here is reuse processes which are proven and which are established in many situations in the past and which you can reuse very easily in your organization. And last but not least, technology. And technology is not only the question of which kind of systems and tools you should use in your innovation environment, for instance, collaboration and co-creation tools. It is also the question of which kind of technologies you should apply, especially if you're working on data-driven business models or technology-enabled business models. It is important to have the right technology in your team available. But technology is only one part of the structure of an innovation team. You have also to think about methodologies, certain kind of methodologies, for instance, for mobile working or participation. So please think also about which kind of, not only tools, also methodologies you have to apply to be more agile, to be more innovative, to be able to co-create new ideas with internal and external partners. And last but not least, you have also to think about which kind of rooms and workplace environments are necessary to enable innovation. So beside technologies, also room, workplace design, for us, it is a great and very important enabler to become an innovative company. So this should give you a very first overview of 4 strategic dimensions which you have to be considered if you would like to start setting up an innovation competency in your company, in your environment. So then I would like to go to the second poll we have already prepared for you. So
I think it will come in a few seconds. Here we go.
Okay, how important do you think the sustainable development of innovation competency is? Truly important? Okay, let's discuss, or not so much. At first, we have to focus on our financials.
All right, I think we do have a clear picture.
Yeah.
By now, if there's questions, please feel free to reach out in the chat.
Okay, so
We're done.
74% of you said that setting up a sustainable development of innovation competency is truly important, and we have to start immediately. This is a very good result, and it shows us that which kind of mindset in this call is existing. Okay, then if we would like to start now, we would like to run a short exercise with you. And before you start implementing innovation competency in your company, at first it is important to assess the status quo. So what you have learned is that you know which kind of strategic dimensions you have to consider in setting up innovation. And now, Carsten, please, next slide. We would like to...
Sorry, Michael, we have questions here in the chat.
Okay.
So this is a question from Verena Pachmajer. She's asking, how would you start implementing design thinking process on a large scale in a corporate environment?
Especially in a corporate environment, and we have done this for blue chip companies and also for our last employer. What we have learned is that it might be easier to start in a very small environment to create a positive event, which has a function of an example that this new way of working is feasible and will work in such a company. So you can introduce this idea and this mindset of design thinking to the leaders, to the board. This is important to setting the scene and to give everyone an orientation. What does it mean to become an innovative company? And then you should start with a small project, with a small event, with a small problem statement, and start working with people who are willing to try these new methodologies in your company to get a first positive example of how it feels and how it look like.
All right. Thank you, Michael. So any more questions here? So feel free to post a question. Okay, so then we can move over to this to the second part, Michael.
The exercise.
To the exercise part, right? Yeah.
In our d.quarks.
So no more questions.
One more questions, Felix?
No, I see no more questions. But if there anything occurs, then we can maybe take the question later in the discussion. But no more questions right now, so we can continue in the exercise.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So in our d.quarks framework, the related d.quarks to innovation competency is called digital business development. And you see the description of this d.quark: identifying new business ideas and developing digital business models with a clear focus on users and customers, collecting customer feedback at an early stage based on prototypes, permits the iterative enhancement and refinement of the future business model. This way, options to scale up the business model can be identified early on. Involving the combined intelligence of numerous developers, users, and customers brings new perspectives, insights, and experiences to the development process, which is an indispensable requirement in the digital age. And there are some attributes which characterize this capability. And we mentioned some of these attributes before, for instance, user journey design or prototyping or co-creation. So what I would like to do with you now is that you take 5 minutes and think about along the 4 dimensions: people, organization, processes, and technology. How would you assess this capability, digital business development, for your company? And you can do it in a way. For instance, in the next slide, we have prepared one assessment tool. You can do this in such a way that you have a 5-scale assessment from red to green, and you should assess every 4 dimension separately. So you start with people and skills. Do you have the right people on board? Do you have the right roles and competencies already implemented? Do you have the right organization already established? And then you can decide yes or no, and you can assess this dimension from red to green. And the same you're doing with processes and with the technology. And at the end, you can assess the maturity level of the whole digital capability. You see here 2 other capabilities: digital incubator and agile collaboration, which are also very important for setting up an innovation competency. But at the moment, for this exercise now, we only like to focus on digital business development. So I would say let's have 5 minutes for brain writing, brain thinking at your own, and go through these 4 dimensions and think about and assess this capability in your company, for your company.
Perfect. I'm going to play some music meanwhile that people can focus even better. So take your time, go through the exercise, and then we're looking forward to your answers.
sais bien, d.quarks et 2.0. J'ai besoin de faire le beau, je sais bien que notre duo a quelques défauts. Horizontaux. Practice. Indice. Prémisse. Qui rend fou. Aïe. Actif. Je suis là pour
Okay, so let's wait one more minute for everyone. Okay. So I hope the music was a little bit inspiring. I mean, this is not the moment of truth, but I think Michael described it very well. So thanks a lot for explaining the exercise. Actually, this board is there to get a feeling a little bit on where you see the progress and the maturity, as Michael said, regarding digital business development in those 4 fields. And where would you see from your perspective the maturity level of your company? So you don't have to name your company, and it's there to have a discussion. That's maybe important to mention in this point. And yeah, I would be happy if anybody here in this round would start presenting his results or her results. Is there anybody who wants to go first? You can use your microphone and your camera if you like. I'll give you some extra seconds to think about.
It would be good if someone of you can share your insights. No secrets, only the insights, and this would be good for everyone in the call to learn and to compare your situation with the situation in my company.
Maybe give a little time and to maybe think about, and maybe going over to a first question I will have, Michael, to you and Carsten.
Okay.
So do you, from your perspective, from your experience, is how would you see the focus here? So is it mainly in most industries, in corporates, people and skills topic, or is it a technology issue? Is there anything we can say? Typically, we see that the maturity discussion runs on a process or on a people level. Do you have any experience on that that you can share from your experience in projects?
It is crystal clear. Transformation and building up innovation competency is not a tech change, it's a people change. So technology, methodologies, processes are only enablers. And what you need is the willingness to change, the willingness to be more innovative than in the past, the willingness of using and applying the new tools and methodologies, and not only joining a 2 days design thinking workshop or to working together 2 or 3 times with a startup. If we are thinking on innovation competency, then we think about to individualize, to implement innovation competency on a regular basis. And for this, you need leaders and owners of family businesses and the top management who would like to give budget, people, and the environment to set up this innovation competency at its best. And from our experiences, independent of it, if we are talking about or if we are talking with a family business, a small business, or a blue chip company, it depends on the leaders, the top management, who are willing to start this change. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe if I can add something as well from my side, I think the cultural and the people part is very important, but it also needs to go hand in hand, at least with some structural modifications, because typically you don't find an environment where you actually incentivize innovation or business innovation in that way. So typically we all know that probably the KPIs that we all that we all have to adhere to are, okay, give me a business case, make it 2% precise, and then I decide whether you get the money for realizing this, and if you don't realize the business case, I chop off your head, right? So this is typically also the processes and the KPIs that we sometimes, and the cultural leadership culture that we are often live in. So they also need to be a structural environment. This is why, for instance, the digital incubator is quite important as well. A structural, protected environment where you don't have these rough KPIs where this innovation can actually flourish. So structural modifications are important such that a culture can actually emerge in that direction.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you both. We have a question from Barbara here. She's asking, when finding people and skills for innovation competencies, is that search progress based on job position and hard skills? Or do you also recommend to consider soft skills or organizational skills that every innovator needs to build these competencies?
I would argue that, the methods you can easily actually learn. It's not rocket science, but the mindset and the attitude is more important. And specifically, as far as leaders are concerned, you need leaders that have the right mindset and the right attitude. I mean, we're doing a lot of work and actually reprogramming people that you need leadership practices in such an innovation environment, which might be absolutely controversial to their normal command and control leadership practices. So it is the attitude among everyone, from the leaders to the employees. So you should rather first hire for attitude. You should hire for intrinsic motivation. You should hire for creativity, I would say, and spirit and energy. So that if you find that in people, that is the most important part. I mean, the techniques you can learn very, very easily. And it's better to have people coming together that have different backgrounds from different disciplines, right? That bring different things to the table, but that have the right attitude to collaborate. And that is often even the hardest part, to find people that have this open collaborative attitude. Interestingly, you find it very often from young people that have just left university, because they bring in that fresh mind, so they don't have that corporate programming yet. So once you get socialized into corporate structures and into the power structures, you typically navigate in a different way, and you create a different perspective on how you navigate and how you deal with people. So, and that is then the hard part, to have senior people that bring in skills and background and knowledge, but also that are able to change their attitude in the right way. But it's possible. You just need to moderate it, because you just need to experience the benefits that come out of it. Then people are actually opening up and seeing the benefits and really adapting to the changed situation, at least from my experience.
Okay, so obviously it's a process issue in the first place, right? So if you combine both things, like a skill set and the technology you have in place, taking the second example, for example, here, digital incubator, I can speak from my own experience, from my former employee, that process and organization was the hardest challenge, building up a digital incubator. So obviously we all had great ideas, but bringing them to surface daylight and to working on a collaborative level with other business units, that was such a hard ride. So I think some of you in this session might experience the same situation, or see some obstacles in the agile collaboration. So if there's anybody here who would like to share some experiences from their own along agile collaboration, or maybe you're already on the road to build up a digital incubator, surely it would be great for us all to get some from your experience here in the session. And here's Anton with another question. How very interesting question that comes up very often, we can see how to measure return on investment of creativity. So I think it's very important for digital business development, actually, for all three examples here. Can you speak about that a little bit?
I think this. I give you a different example. Because this actually, to my perspective, this whole mindset of measurement comes from this optimization and scalable world, which is sort of in the right part of the resilience loop, right? So if I improve a process and I take out costs of a process, I can actually measure. If I take that costs out, I can actually measure and calculate a ROI, which is very easy, right? If I'm in this explorative mode of innovation, I need a different mindset. So we're asking rather, okay, what kind of company do we want to be in the future, right? And it's hard to predict. This unpredictability is a different kind of animal, right? So, and it has a certain flavor to it, that if I can't predict, I can experience these nonlinear effects, meaning that my business model can actually scale within 5 years in a nonlinear way, and it actually goes through the roof, right? And we have some examples for that, but it can also take 20 years. So the key question is, what kind of company do I want to be? Where do I want to put my investments in? What do I believe in? So it's rather a matter of, what is my vision? What is my belief? Where I want to be? And the KPIs that you rather put there are more qualitative KPIs, right? For instance, Google has one of their KPIs saying, with one innovation, if we don't reach 1 billion customers, it's not a good innovation. So one KPI is, are we reaching 1 billion customers? So it's not about revenue, but it's about market penetration. It's about market reach, right? So these are more things that you can measure quantitatively, but they come from a different angle, right? And if you do that, then you can experience these nonlinear effects, because you need to deal with this uncertainty. And I experienced that myself when I changed the leadership attitude in 2 different departments, and we just focused on these qualitative measurements. For instance, I increased productivity in those teams by 150%. So we were 15 times as much more productive as we were in the last year. So this was a nonlinear productivity effect, and you cannot predict that, right? And you cannot predict when it's going to happen. It could happen after 1 year. It could happen after 3 years. You cannot predict it. So you need this qualitative approach, and you really and this measurement comes from a different perspective. Yeah.
maybe adding
Okay,
to
is there
this
any?
question, because I
Mhm.
sorry for jumping in at that point. Maybe adding to the question that I just raised before regarding ROI, and thank you for the answer that you gave. You mentioned this example with increasing productivity. Maybe can you give us some more insights on that, on how you did it in the end? So what's also the measurements that you took? What's the time frame that you gave the team to reach this goal? That would be super
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, actually, there was an article in the Harvard Business Review where I published the results. But that was in 2008 actually. So nobody was talking about digital and agile at that time. But what we experienced, that was a team of about 100 people, which were in about bad performance, and also it was in software development and architecture, and we actually decided that we are approaching leadership and the way to collaborate in this innovation mode. And we took these more qualitative KPIs, which were rather focused on how many innovative ideas are we producing per week? How many innovative ideas are we converting to prototypes? Yeah. So these kind of more qualitative aspects, which are looking at how good are we at innovation, how good are we at collaborating, how good are we at integrating the power and the enthusiasm of all the people. And what we experienced is, and I did this over 3 years actually, but what we experienced that in the first, I think it was like 4 to 6 months, productivity was actually going down. And my bosses actually, were looking at me with very strong eyes and asking me, Carsten, do you really know what you're doing? Because productivity was going down. Yeah, it was not a linear thing. So it's a complex system, right? And these complex systems react in a non-linear way. But after 6 months, we actually reached the bottom peak, and then it scaled in a non-linear way. And we came out, I think, 150% over our target. Yeah. So, and that was interestingly, and we could measure that over a period of 3 years actually. And I built this in different teams. And we had as I said, a few nice articles and journal papers out there to document this. So there's ways, I mean, even in management research, there's a lot of content there. We don't know how to do it. The point is we're not doing it because we're programmed, we're socialized in a different way, right? We're all the practices that we're living, that we're coming from the scalability world, right? So that this optimization world, and this is a different game, but we're not recognizing that. So it's available. You just have to do that, and you need the guts and the courage to do that. You have to be courageous. You have to be courageous and say, okay, it can be that in 6 months, even my performance will go down, but I can trust in the complex system that there's a point when it goes up and it will scale in a non-linear way. It will react in a non-linear way. And if you have the guts to do that, at least I experienced it, and I experienced it over and over again. And the way we do it with our customers, for instance, when we work with them, we try to give them the courage to go through that process and to go through that experience. But this is something you need to do. It's not easy, but you can do it if you just decide to do that.
One another ROI which comes in my mind is, Anton, if you would celebrate the failure of the month, you start developing a mistake culture. And I think this is also very important. So be more constructive, be more open, transparent, offense with doing failures, because if you're doing a failure, you can learn out of this failure. And this is for me very important ROI. If you are able in an organization to learn from your failures you've done in the past. And the first thing to do this is to be open to speak loud about your failures and to reward and celebrate the failure of the month. Could be first little tool in your team, in your organization, your business unit, to get in a completely different attitude in dealing with failures.
Okay, Anton, if that's fine for you, I would move over to another question. Anton, is that fine for you? Or any other follow-up question? Okay, thank you. So here's another question from Barbara to Carsten. How can adaptation in employees to the exponential increasing curve of technology development be fostered so that employees feel secure and can work productively?
Yeah, I mean, there was a study also from Google to decide, okay, what determines the productivity of teams, and they found out that it's only one factor. It's this factor of psychological safety, and I think this is where this hints to. I think security can only be given by leaders. I mean, if I create an environment, and if my role as a leader is to create an environment where people feel safe, where people feel that they can learn, where people feel that they can bring in their ideas. For instance, we had this slide earlier where I talked about this yes but and the yes and, right? If my employees come to me and ask me, this is my idea, what do you think? And I always say yes but it doesn't work, yes but yeah, they will probably not come back again. So if I create an environment where people feel safe also to learn from the mistakes that they make, they are able to deal with this uncertainty. At least that's my experience. So you understand that uncertainty is part of the normal state, right? It's not that we can get rid of uncertainty or that we can get rid of things that might happen unplanned, but we have a confident feeling that we're able to deal with it and that we're able to learn with it. And this is typically needs to be created in an environment by the leaders and how they look at it. And then if people feel safe, that they are not afraid to make mistakes, that they're not afraid if something is happening, coming across that they have not planned, then they're able to activate their own creative energies and to deal with it. Yeah. So it's a matter of the leaders, and the leadership culture that we often observe is not in that direction. Yeah, mistakes are punished. Yeah, if and even we rather face a competitive environment where people are acting as competitors internally. Employees are acting as competitors, and in such an environment where we want to foster this innovation, you need to cultivate a different culture, and this can only be created as a secure environment from the leaders. It doesn't need to be the big leader. You can do it in a small thing. If you are, let's say, if you have a team of 12 people, you can do that with your 10 or 12 people. You just need to give them your back, right? Say, I'm doing different things differently. We did that ourselves. Michael and myself did that ourselves. We when we worked for PwC, we had a team of about 20 something people, and we decided that we are managing this team in a completely different way than the rest of the companies managed. And you can do that. You have to take the beats, but you can do it.
So thank you, Carsten. Barbara, if there's no following question on this, then I think we have some time for every one of you to maybe think about your assessment. So I would like to ask again if there's anybody here in the session who would like to introduce his assessment, going from left or to right, or Igor, you'd like to introduce your assessment on agile collaboration or on a digital incubator?
Maybe, Felix, we can add that you can do this anonymously. You don't need to say the company. You can just, if you want to, right? You just say, we are in retail and we have an issue here and there, and we're good here and there. So if you don't want to, yeah, you can do it anonymously. But it would be good to have a conversation just a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think especially in the, as mentioned as in the second example here, digital incubator, when you are building this incubator, you have the process, you have the people, you have the technology. I experienced this in the course of the building up. You see, you might witness a different maturity level. So you always want to reach for the green level. Everything is fine, so you have everything going well, but obviously that's never the case. So might be no digital incubator out there who would say that their process is on a and all four fields are on a green level. So you will always have like discussions on organization or people coming in and people that need to be organized in a different way with business units. So it's not a shame if you witness at this time that the maturity level or something is already in progress and needs to be fostered in a way. So just a few comments on this from my side here.
Yeah, it's not a question about being good or bad. It's rather saying, okay, we're working on this, and this is where we're struggling. We're struggling more in this area than that area. So that would just be interesting also, again, from a qualitative discussion. It's not about the point whether you're red or green or something like that.
Any volunteers?
Felix, if not, let's start the third and last poll today.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end, we would like to ask you, are you going to start building innovation competency in the next 72 hours? Why we said this? Because our experience is, if you have something in your mind, if you are convincing about to change the way of work, something in your life, and you don't do this in the next 3 days, you won't do this in the next couple of weeks. And this is the reason why we asked you, what are you able to start building innovation competency in the next 72 hours?
Yeah, it's a tough question. Maybe the mood would be totally different some months ago. And of course, the entire situation during this crisis is something that's maybe not feeling everybody's sure or secure about this, as we can see now in the trend. Maybe also goes together with the current situation we're in right now.
Felix, this is a very important topic you mentioned. If you're in a crisis, the window of opportunity to change things in your work, in your life, in your economy, in your company is greater than before. And remember back the discussion in the last 3 months after the shutdown in Europe about what we have to learn out of coronavirus, what we have to do after the crisis is end. There's a lot of discussion about how we have to change our economy, how we have to set up sustainable business models in the future. So we have to take this crisis as a chance for change. And this is our obligation to do this as leaders, for instance. And so you made a very, very important point, yeah, to take the crisis as a chance and to start transforming your company, your business model, and setting up the right capabilities. Now it's the right time to do this. Okay.
Thank you.
So it's a very tough question. I can imagine.
Obviously, yeah.
If it is okay. what we can do if no one is willing to discuss his or her assessment in the audience. What we can offer to you is to invite you to fill in your own digital self-assessment, d.quarks self-assessment for these three related d.quarks. This is digital business development, digital incubator, and agile collaboration. We can give you the d.quarks cards for these three capabilities. So you can read this after the session and you can start filling in this assessment for your own. And if you send us back this canvas, then Carsten, Felix, and myself, we will set up a 30 minutes call with you and discuss your assessment, the results of your assessment of your company together, and give first check from our side to your assessment, to your self-assessment. So after this meeting, we send around this canvas, the three related capabilities, the description of the capabilities, and the invitation to come back to us and have a brief discussion of your self-assessment afterwards. Yeah, not in the next 72 hours, but if you would like to do this in the next couple of weeks, no issue. Please come back to us, don't hesitate. And especially digital incubator, agile collaboration, and digital business development is something where we can also support you. We, d.quarks and Pioneers together can support you in setting up this innovation competency and the related capabilities to be successful, to become an innovative company. And if you would like to hear our first impressions of your self-assessment, we are very happy to support you in this way as well.
Very nice offer from you. Thank you, Michael. So yeah, hopefully there will be some of you who like to go that in a deeper discussion on that. So I would share my screen here in the next, or if there is anybody now have a question, we can open the discussion right now. But looking on the time also, I hope there might be some questions to the entire framework. So obviously we discussed the resilience of companies today, the importance of thinking innovation in a sustainable way. And this goes also together with a clear picture of the maturity of the company in different fields. So I think that was there to give you a deeper insight how you can go into an active mode in this crisis to see how the situation for your innovation processes actually are in specific fields such as digital business development, digital incubator, or agile collaboration, just to name a few. I see another question here from Barbara in the chat. So let's take the next 4 minutes to maybe have the last questions to your presentation. So the question is, can you please specify the continuous innovation in the context of Corona, and how could continuous innovation have prevented the intensity of this hit? Very interesting question. Yeah. Thank you, Barbara. Who wants to answer?
I can start, and please, Carsten, follow up if I forgot something. If you are doing innovation on a regular basis, the idea is that you develop different ideas of new products, new services, probably new business models. And imagine if you have a portfolio of different, very diverse business models based on your core competencies, based on your regular business, and also based on your core competencies, developing something which is completely new and which attacks new value chains in different industries, for instance, then you prevent yourself in a crisis mode, because you don't know exactly in the next crisis which kind of which of your business models and products will be attacked. And to set up your company portfolio more diverse will help you to survive in the next crisis. What we see at the moment is that we have companies who are only focusing on one business model since years. And in the past, it went well, no worries. But for the future, it is very critical because you don't know exactly when the next crisis will come. What we know very well is which kind of crisis we will foresee. So there are crises based on technology, crises based on entering new players in your value chain, crisis of faster changing customer expectations regarding your service portfolio, crisis in the relation of climate change, in the relation of another virus, for instance. So we foresee different crises upcoming, but we don't know exactly when these unplanned events will happen. And for this, it is important not only to focus on one business model, it is very important to set up different business models, very diverse, in different industries and different value chains, based on your core competencies. And to develop this, you need innovation on a regular basis. This is what we have explained in the lower left area of this infinity loop. This is one answer to your question, Barbara.
Maybe we could go in the second part of the second question Barbara was asking. So how a continuous innovation could maybe prevented the intense of the hit of the Corona crisis. So would you say that that digital innovation was left behind or was not that consequent in the past? So we can see various gaps in different processes that haven't been here if we had more focus and more consequent digital transformations in the economy. So that's a nice question. I think I know the answer already, but maybe you can speak about that too. Carsten, your microphone is now
talking on mute. Sorry. Maybe I can say a few words about that. So first of all, what Michael I think also implicitly said, that innovation is and the way we introduced it is a way of a problem-solving method. So it's a way of dealing with unplanned things, and to deal with it in a very fast, progressive, creative way. So it's really, something happens and you deal with it, right? So this is if you cultivate that, if you institutionalize that, your organization will be more adaptable to those unplanned events. So that's one. Regarding the digital thing, I think we can observe that there are some aspects of digital business models which make them more resilient in general, because if I operate just a digital service, I will not be for instance so dependent on global supply chains, right? So if my service runs on a server somewhere and people are just consuming it, and they consume it from anywhere on their mobile phone or whatever, so I'm not dependent on a global supply chain. So if my supplier in China cannot deliver some spare parts that I need, I don't have that problem, right? So I can still operate and even innovate on the service part, even though without selling any additional physical products. Yeah? I'll give you one example. Maybe if I transform my business model from selling washing machines to selling washing as a service, right? So even if I don't sort of sell more machines, right? But if I have an infrastructure of machines that are already sold and I sell washing as a service, probably people will use the washing service more because they stay more at home, need to wash more clothes, and the kids stay at home and they make their clothes more dirty. So even on the service part, even that, my revenues will increase. But if I'm just selling washing machines, I will be dependent on these global supply chains. I need to sell more products. So I can be more creative, and instead of inventing new services that might be more specific to the current situation. So in that sense, I think that digital business models, which are largely based on services, have an advantage, right? An advantage that can be played. However, you need to really look at, and that's the other part that Michael has mentioned, you need to look at that you don't just focus on one business model, but you try to look at what complementary business models could I operate, right? Because if I'm Uber, for instance, even though my business model is probably very digital and I don't have infrastructure, but if people don't buy Uber services anymore because they don't travel, my revenues will go down. But if I think about something complementary, as I mentioned, if I was Uber and I invest in something like Zoom, if people stay at home, they don't travel, they will use online virtual communication services, and that will go up. So that's a complementary idea of approaching business models that have complementary scalability, right? So, and these are the angles that you can look at. And in that sense, it's a matter of looking at the risks, that operational risks that can occur, and then dealing with them, but also investing in them. But it will take some time, investing in them for the sake of, that it pays off in a situation like this, that the crisis does not hit you that hard, right? So, and that's something you can argue. You can argue, okay, why is the airline businesses have not come up with that idea earlier, right? So will people fly 3, 4, 5, 10 times more in the future, or is that really a sustainable approach? Or would it have been good to look at something? Okay, there might be other ways, complementary ways of innovating and looking at other business models in other areas. Yeah, is it a good idea if you are a component, if you're producing component for combustion engines, do you think that's a sustainable business model, right? Selling more cars, fuel-based, fossil fuels, is that something that is sustainable? Or is it good to look at that now and to look at alternatives and alternatives business models, right? So this is the kind of thing and attitude that we want to play.
Okay.
All right. So thank you a lot, Carsten and Michael, for these last words and the discussion. So I think I would now hand over to Micha for the last part.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. I just saw the time is up, unfortunately. Yeah, first of all, thank you so much, Carsten. Thank you, Michael, for these insights. It's a big topic. We're in a crisis. Yes, it's a lot of transformation that needs to go on, and I think the framework that you provided is very useful. So I'm inviting everyone to get in touch with us also after this workshop and share your thoughts. I know it's not always easy to share these thoughts publicly in a workshop like this, but we want to get in touch with you and also hear what you think about it. What does it feel for your organization? So I'm going to send out a follow-up email with the slides from today, and we're super happy to receive your feedback also in the form that I just provided in the chat. So we're happy to hear from you. What was good today? What could we do better for further sessions? Yeah, so please be in touch with us, and we're always super happy to hear from you. The next online learning lab session is in 2 weeks with myself and Michael, a software developer also from Pioneers, and it's all about coding and software development. So it's about what is actually computer science, what are algorithms. You will learn to code on a very basic level. So it's a really good introduction for everyone to get into the world of software development and software teams. Yeah, but that's it for today. So thank you so much all for joining, and have a good and nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.